don't know if I can speak for everyone on this on the panel, but in the U.S., I don't know many reporters who majored in journalism per se, because typically the approach is, regardless of what you wanted to do after graduation, you studied what you wanted to study. And what I always wanted to study was history, and I absolutely loved it. And I studied all kinds of history, and I never really thought about being a journalism major. Therefore, if I want to be a reporter, therefore I should do journalism. It was very much study what you want to study, and on the side I had plenty of opportunities to write both for my school paper as well as doing some freelancing for newspapers in New Jersey, where Princeton is.
When you're 17, 18-year-olds, to choose a path and go down that path, and that's exactly what you're going to be doing, for the rest of your life. I think the point of an education is to really be exposed to the world's greatest thinkers, to be passionate about what it is that you're studying. And I think a liberal arts education, very similar to Normandy's experience, it really focuses on knowledge for the sake of knowledge. What you get in the U.S. is a wide range of choices, and you can be very, very specific with what you do with your education and be very goal-orientated. But you can also go into universities that really sort of challenge you to think at the deepest level. I think if you find something that you're really passionate about in university, the amount of commitment that you put into that will eventually allow you to really evolve your thinking, evolve your ability to articulate and have a point of view. And that applies to anything that you do after you finish university.
I think one of the great reasons to study abroad is really to build up your confidence, because once you could become independent, you could leave your family, you could think for yourself, you could, everything that my fellow panelists has already said. And also it's very, it would really broaden up your mind and give you the confidence to do something that out of the box. I grew up in Hong Kong. I studied in Canada, US. I'm back in Hong Kong. I just expanded my company in China 2 years ago. And if I don't have that abroad experience, I would really have probably just limit myself to where Hong Kong is. But now I've seen the world. I've been out there. I know what's going on. I have the confidence to expand and to grow bigger.
One of the nice things about the small schools is that actual professors teach your classes, even when you're a freshman. And if you go to the big universities, you have graduate students teaching your first and second year classes for the most part. So that's one of the real benefits of a small school. And I think for a foreign student, that would be especially helpful. You get a lot more personal time with the professors. And, if there are, language issues or culture issues that you want to get some personal attention, you can get it there. Yeah, for journalism, I would say start writing and reading a lot. But in terms of thinking about schools and going to university, I would advise you not to go in being quite sure about what you want to study. Take classes in a lot of different areas, and when you're 17 or 18 or 19, it's very hard to know what you want to do with your life. So think about other options.
Just to add to that, more concretely, when you go through the admissions process for a U.S. university, they're looking for people who have sort of a balanced, there's a number of things that they look at, and grades are only one of the aspects. You will have to write essays, and so expressing an opinion is very important. Practicing your writing is very important. Extracurricular programs like the ones that were mentioned are count a lot towards admissions. So it's really a very different process there. They look at the whole person, not just the grades that you've received in your classes.
And test scores.
And you take the SAT and all of that. But it's so balanced, and that's what makes it so fair, the admissions process in the US. It's not just about one thing, it's about every single aspect of a person's development. So these are great ideas, but they directly could contribute to, helping you in your admissions process towards a US university. I think one of the things, the really interesting thing about the U.S. is you have those first 2 years most of the times before you declare a major, and it's a really good time to take a wide array of courses and really think about what you want to do in life. If you're qualified and passionate and smart, you will always get a job. There's not enough talent in the world, and it's not all the jobs are just in medicine or law, or there's just a wide range of occupations out there, and it's better for you to be truly passionate about what you do.
For students who go to study in the U.S. for undergraduate, or if they do a master, usually they go on a U.S. student visa. But usually the student visa also includes a certain amount of time after graduation, usually around 1 year. And this time, the U.S. government calls this optional practical training, OPT, and they usually have about a year after graduation where you're free to work in the U.S. and you don't have to, your employer would not have to get a U.S. work permit for you. So that is a good way to get your foot in the door in the U.S. if you're really interested in studying and working in the U.S. But I think if you just go straight from Hong Kong to the U.S., it's a little bit more difficult. I think. Okay.
The way of thinking as opposed to substantive knowledge that they focus on. They want students to think critically, to analyze creatively, and to be able and not to be afraid to communicate their ideas and to agree to disagree. And also they provide a very broad platform in terms of the type of people that's involved in that sort of high-level intellectual communication. They intentionally draw a very diverse pool of students. That is what a U.S. education is about. We do not want, the U.S. education does not want to mold you into just regurgitating the facts or to remember the rules, but rather to be someone who drives solutions, who presents solutions, who can think creatively to deliver a solution to a problem.
I can only narrowly speak to the U.S., but there's so much research that happens in the universities in the United States. And so getting to be a part of that, you have, like you said, the top person in a field will be at a university, and they're at that university and they're doing research. So they're on the cutting edge of what's happening in that field next. And you get exposed to that as a student at that particular school, because if you have that professor as one of your professors, then you instantly get information that is not out there in another place. It's right there, and it's being presented to you right from the horse's mouth. And so that's something in the U.S. that the universities have millions of dollars in research that is happening every day, every year. The main thing that I can point you to is those basic courses that you take. If you haven't quite figured out what you want to do, you don't know if you want to be a dentist or a nurse or whatever that is, it's that stuff that inspires you initially. So if you think, I'm going to go to medical school and this is what I want to do, that stuff that inspires you early on, that's the stuff that's who you are, and that's what you're going to do really well with. So focus on that. If you can have any time visiting in somebody's office or in a hospital, volunteering, any of that, if you think you're interested in the medical field, getting that firsthand exposure of seeing what do they do on a day-to-day basis, even if you volunteer in the gift shop, whatever, if you can find some place where you can see firsthand what all the different pieces of that puzzle are, then it gives you a better idea of what area you want to focus in.